What's up, guys? The Methodical Show here tonight to bring you the review for Season 7, Episode 9 of The 100. Tonight's episode served as almost a mid-season finale for The 100, as we won't be getting a new episode for, I believe, 2 to 3 weeks. A big thought for me going into the episode tonight was hoping that tonight's episode was going to be good enough to keep people wanting to see and waiting till after the mid-season break. So do I think it was good enough to do that? I thought it was a solid episode. It was decent. I'd say about a 7.5 out of 10. It was solid. It wasn't the best we've seen this season, but it wasn't bad by any means. It was a solid, good episode, I think. My biggest gripe with it is that nobody of note died in the Sanctum plot again, and that's been a big complaint, is that entire arc going on with Sanctum right now just seems to be kind of going nowhere, and I wish some people of note would start dying or feel like the story being moved forward in a really progressive way. I guess you could say we did get a pretty big change in tonight's story with SHEIDHEDA taking over Sanctum possibly now and going forward with that, but I kind of wish we would have got to it a little bit sooner. I feel like this is a bit late in the season for it. I wish we would have got to this point around episode maybe 6 or 7 and not 9, but maybe that's just me being too critical of the show, but I do wish we would have got to the point we ended tonight's episode at. I wish we would have got to this a little bit earlier in the season, because this entire Sanctum story has been a little, at times, not as entertaining as what's going on with the anomaly, so I wish we would have got to this point sooner, and if we did, I feel like we would be at such an interesting point in that story right now, because next week in the Sanctum story, next episode is going to be very entertaining with SHEIDHEDA taking over and seeing how that all unfolds. That's going to be very good, but now they've left us on a cliffhanger, which I guess is good, but I do wish we got here sooner. But forget all that for now. Let's go back to the beginning of the episode and then start from there and work our way to the ending that we saw. Tonight's episode began with a 3 months earlier flashback, which is not really 3 months, it's time dilation with Bardo and all that, which is quite confusing to anybody watching the show. I don't even fully understand it yet myself. It has something to do with the black hole, time dilation, but 3 months earlier, it showed before Octavia, Echo, and Dioza really began their training to become disciples, Anders showed them the surface and what they were preparing to fight for the final war. Once we were shown that scene, we saw the bodies of the Bardones who lost their final war with these supposed crystal giant alien things, who we still at this point know next to nothing about, really. I do feel like this were really going to be like the final war, and if this is actually going to be the final war, we should know more about whatever these things are at this point, but we don't really know anything. Octavia also mentioned that they were 10 feet tall and they had all this crazy technology, and they didn't really expand too much on that idea. Maybe we find out more in the future episodes. I hope we do, if this is actually the final war. I still don't really understand yet if we're going to be helping Bardo and fight these aliens, or if they're going to turn against Bardo and just take all their stuff. Like, I don't really know where this season's headed right now, which does make this season very interesting, but also a little confusing at the same time, which probably sums up Season 7 in a perfect way, actually. It's been very confusing, but kind of entertaining at the same time. Then we go back to Sanctum, and Nikki makes Imori talk into a microphone, and she tells Murphy not to come because Nikki was demanding that Raven, Murphy, and Russell be brought to her, most likely to execute all 3 of them, or at least Raven and Murphy anyway. And at this point, she still has no idea. Nobody even told her in this episode that Raven is not in Sanctum. She's not even on their planet anymore, so I hope someone lets her in on that soon, but she's not there. We then saw Murphy and Jackson, who were in a different part of Sanctum, hiding out from these guys and all the Allegius guys with guns and all that. They don't really understand what they're going to be able to do. They can hear Imori talking and her being forced to talk, but they can't really do anything about it. Murphy mentions that he's 150 pounds, and Jackson can't fight worth anything, so they can't really do anything. And then in walks Indra, who took a break last episode. She was just gone wherever, I guess. Indra then comes in, returns, and then her and Murphy are able to make some type of plan, and then they gotta go talk to SHEIDHEDA, who then they strike a deal with later on. We then go back to Bardo, where the training 3 months ago begins with Anders and Levitt putting Octavia, Echo, and Dioza and Hope against a few random disciple training partners who they are able to make quick work out of, considering they've all been training, fighting years before ever coming to Bardo. They then put Octavia, Echo, and Dioza and Hope under these mental tests using wild technology to access their mind and mess with their emotions. The only one we see under this emotional mental test at the beginning of the episode is Dioza dealing with baby Hope, and Anders, who then, when they wake up, threatens Dioza that if she doesn't commit to the training, that they're going to send her to penance and she's going to die. We then go back to Sanctum, where SHEIDHEDA is able to strike a deal with Indra and Murphy to help them take the palace back. SHEIDHEDA then presents a map of a tunnel underneath the palace, which he had already marked out long ago, which shows you how clever of a villain he really is. He is probably one of the most sly villains we've ever encountered in the entire series, I would think. Everyone on the show has been kind of hyping up SHEIDHEDA and like what he's capable of and all this, and we've seen little glimpses of it, but it is always interesting to see what this character's capable of and what type of villain they're really going to be dealing with going into this back half of the season. Another point to this episode that I think people are going to be talking about a lot is that Octavia and Levitt finally hooked up, and we've been seeing this brewing all season. We've seen this back as far ago as I think episode 5, and there's been slight teases that this is clearly where it was going, and then tonight's episode finally made that official. There is still something a little bit suspicious about Levitt, I think. I think there's some more to this, to how loyal he is to Anders and Cadogan that he's not letting on, and we might see Octavia forced to cut ties with him later on or something, because at this point it's kind of seemed a little bit forced, but maybe he is really on our side. I don't know. That character makes me a little suspicious still. Murphy and SHEIDHEDA then finally turned themselves in, as they wanted Murphy and Russell, and obviously Russell's not actually Russell, but they turned themselves in as part of the plan with Indra, and then she's gonna sneak in the tunnel underneath, and they just need to buy some time until that happens. Nikki and Nelson and the rest of the Allegius and the Children of Gabriel then made Russell and Murphy tell Mori actually tell everybody that was there, which is everybody really that lives in Sanctum, who they really were, as all three of them have been playing the part of some type of prime, which they clearly are not, so they were then forced to actually tell everybody their real identities. All three attempted to talk as slowly as possible to allow Indra a chance to sneak in and take back the palace. Nikki then still wanted to go ahead with killing Murphy or Imori, and Murphy was able to buy some more time for Imori by telling Nikki that Hatch was a good man, and talking really just about Hatch was able to get her attention off Imori for the time being, and gave enough time for Indra and the rest to sneak in the back, and they didn't really have to kill too many people to take the room. They just killed, I think, a couple. They then stormed in with guns, and they were able to take back the room from the rest and do it rather peacefully. We then got a scene where Echo and Hope were talking, and Hope was wanting to burn down the Bardo forest and basically ruin everything that they have there, and Echo was against it immediately. Then we saw the whole simulation play out, and it gave me a solid scare, because I thought for a second there they actually killed off Hope in that scene, and I was gonna be shocked, but it was revealed right afterwards that it was obviously just mind simulation and all that, and Echo was actually willing to kill Hope to save Bardo and show her dedication to the cause. Right after Echo's test plays out and she passes, we then see Hope take the exact same simulation test, except with Hope being there as the one who wants to end Bardo. It's actually her mother, and she is unable to kill her mother and actually goes through with the plan to help her destroy it, which therefore means that she failed the test. And once we get to around the end of the episode, we see Indra make a horrible mistake by leaving SHEIDHEDA alone with the fanatics. She believed that the fanatics were going to kill him, but once Murphy accidentally says that it's SHEIDHEDA, the grounders open the door, and we see that he has murdered every single fanatic that was in the room. He was just standing above a pile of bodies, and then he says in Grounder that his fight is just beginning, and that's the end. It was a fantastic cliffhanger, I will say, but I do wish that this came a little bit earlier in the season, like I said earlier, but it was still a great cliffhanger nonetheless, and it does progress the Sanctum story a little bit. One other thing that I should also mention about this episode was the scene where Echo was allowed to pick the punishment for Hope, and she decided to send Hope to penance for 5 years. Now, I have no idea how they're actually going to do this. I guess they can do it and not really show us any of it in the time dilation, so it would be like, I don't know, a few scenes later, but they sent her away, and then Octavia and Dioza both looked at Echo, and they looked still a bit shocked, even though they both passed their tests as well. Echo seems to be the most into what Bardo's doing out of the three by far. Anders even went as far as to call her their star student of the bunch, which, as we saw, was definitely the case. That's the way she was set up this episode, is to be the one that's the most into everything that they're doing. I think a lot of what Echo's story is right now is the fact that Bellamy's gone, and the fact that she feels like she has nothing, like no connection to the people anymore, and then this is her cause, and she's basically referring back to her grounder days and just following and listening to whoever her leader is. I feel like Echo has grown a bit as a character over the seasons, and to see her kind of revert back to the way she was when we first met her is a little bit disappointing for that character, I think. I wish that she would show a bit more resistance at least, but she's all in, and just now that Bellamy's gone, no ties to these people, and that's just it, and she's kind of the way she was when she was with Azgeda and Rowan and such. We also kind of got our answer to why are they disciples, which is a video I made earlier in the week. And why are they disciples? Well, they weren't brainwashed, but they were kind of just mentally broken down bit by bit over the course of 3 months, and that's it. But it's nothing like mind control robotic stuff. It's pretty much just that they are willing to fight for this cause, but they can still be swayed either way. They could easily be swayed back to our group's side, no problem. And that brings us to the end of this review, and one thing I want to mention before I end the review is that if you enjoyed this review and you like 100 and you like other TV shows, please subscribe and leave a like, and I'll catch you all in the next video.